Hello and welcome back to our tutorial series on our Golang crash course. My name is Chris Franklin. So let's go ahead and jump straight in today. We're going to start again with an empty Go module. We're just going to have go.mod and main.go. Okay, so nothing fancy here. We're going to start with our basic hello world fmt.println hello world. Okay, so today what we're going to be talking about and learning are conditionals and loops within Go. If this is your first language ever to learn, what a conditional and loop allows you to do is to control the flow of the application based off of known states and values. For instance, a loop will say, I want to run this same piece of code 10 times. Or maybe I want to run this same piece of code until some condition is true. Conditionals, on the other hand, are a way to branch and to choose. Do I want to go left, right, or down the middle? You use a conditional statement for that. So let's start learning the basics. This is how we're going to control the flows of all of our applications from now on. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function. And in this function, I want to count to 10. Okay. We're not going to return anything. We're not going to take anything in. All this function is going to be here to do is to print the numbers from 1 to 10. Now, to do this kind of operation, we're going to rely on a looping mechanism inside of Go. Now, Go really only has one loop. It's the for loop. Okay, so we're going to use the keyword for. This is it. It's a for statement. Okay, and I'm going to say for. I hit enter, and it automatically creates this structure for me, okay? And this is the structure, the basic structure of a count. So we're actually going to start at 1. We're not going to start at 0. We're going to start at 1, and we're going to go until I is less than 11. So we're going to count all the way up to 10. Once we hit 11, we know that this condition has been met. It's true. We're no longer going to do whatever is running inside of this for loop. And we're going to increment I by 1. So I++. This is from way back in the days of C. This is the way to do an incremental on our counter. Okay, so we're going to take the variable and we're going to set it back to itself plus plus, which means +1. It's shorthand for +1. Okay, so looking at this, we're declaring I. It's our integer. It starts at 1. It goes here. So all we really have to do here is do format.println, and we're going to print I. Okay, this is the way we're going to count to 10. Now down here, I'm going to replace hello world with our call to count to 10. All right, I save this and I say go run dot and I hit enter, and now you can see I've printed out from 1 to 10. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. You've got 4 and then you have 3. You have your your init block. It comes before the first semicolon. Your actual conditional, the conditions you're looking for, are in the middle, and your post initialization or your post run block is here after the second semicolon. Okay, unlike other languages, if you're used to those, there are no parentheses around all of this. All you have to do is the for block, 3 sections, and then the start of your curly brace, and the curly brace is required inside of Go. Okay, so that's fine, but in other languages you have something called a while block. And what a while block allows you to do is say, while this condition is true, run. Okay. Can you do that with this structure? Sure, you can. Let me go ahead and show you how we can do that. So there are 2 ways to write this. One is much shorter than the other, but we're going to say, create a second function. We're going to call this sum to 1,000. Okay. Inside of here, we're going to create a new sum value, and we're going to say sum is equal to 1. All right. And then at the end of this, we're going to print out the sum that we end up with. That's great. But now let's create our actual for loop. Okay. There are 2 ways we can do this, so I'll show you the long way to do it first, just so that you can get an idea of how it compares to the actual for block up above. So I'm going to say for blank semicolon blank, and then I'm going to say sum is less than 1,000. Do another semicolon, and open here. And that's going to be my curly braces. Then inside of here, I'm going to say sum is plus equal to sum. So I'm going to take sum and add it to itself so that it continues to add. I'm going to save this. Now, when I save this, you're going to see it automatically changes it for me. But let me go back here real quick. So I'm going to Command Z. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to show you what this looks like. You can see up here we have our initialization and our post block, and then I have the conditional in the middle. We do not have to use the initialization or post option inside of a for loop. That is how we create a while loop. In Go, while is spelled F-O-R. Okay? So when I save this, I have a linter, which is a mechanism for cleaning up code and making it look like real production-ready code. So when I save it, it runs across my file and it automatically changes this to what it should look like, which is without the semicolons before and after sum is less than 1,000. So now if I run this and I come down here and I say sum to 1,000 and I run this, you'll now see a new line at the end that's going to count to 1024. So we're adding 1 plus equals 1, you know, and then it's going to keep adding itself. 2 plus equals 2, blah, blah, blah. It's going to double all the way up until it gets to 1024. Okay. And so this is how we create a while loop. This is how we say, while this condition is true, we're going to do whatever's inside of here. And then we're going to exit whenever this condition has been met. So now let's talk about actual conditionals. So we said this is a conditional here of a loop. So we have a loop with a conditional in it. But what if we just want to decide what we're going to do based off of an actual conditional? So we want to use now an if construct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another function here. And I'm going to say this is our if true function so that we can show what we do, how we say if true. And I'm going to say b is equal to true. So I'm going to create a true value here. Now, the most basic way we can do this is we can say if b, which is a Boolean here, a true Boolean, then we're going to comment, and then we're going to create format.println, and we're going to say b is true. Okay. And so I'm going to add this in here. I'm just going to show you that this is working as we expect it to. When I save this and run it, you can now see b is true, which we just defined it as true, so we expect that. Okay. So if true, we're going to run whatever's in here. If this condition is true, we're going to run whatever is inside of the if block. Okay. We can use a short statement instead, though, because this is kind of kludgy. This is messy. We've got 2 lines now here to do a declaration like this. If we want to condense this, we can say if t, and then we're going to do our colon equals true. We're going to do a semicolon in here to say this is a statement that we're adding in. And then we're going to check truth of t. And then we're going to say fmt.println. And we're going to put in t is also true. Okay? Spell this right. Okay. So now if I run this, you can see that t is also true. So we're combining these 2 lines here into a single statement plus conditional block inside of our if. So really convenient shorthand for doing those 2 lines in a single line. Okay. Now, we've seen if, but what about else? There is another conditional here that we can use. And we can say if, and we can say, let's say I is equal to 10. So we're going to set this to 10. That's going to be our declaration statement. And then I'm going to say in the if statement, I is equal to 0. Then we're going to say fmt.println. And then I'm going to say I is 0. Okay? But then I can use, after the if condition, I can say else if I is greater than 100, fmt.println. print line I is greater than 100. Okay. And then I can do finally an else. So what this does is it says, if this condition is true, then do this. Or, if this condition is true, do this. Otherwise, run this piece of code. So fmt print line, and then I is between 0 and 100. Okay. So now if I run this, you'll now see a new line. I is between 0 and 100 because I is 10. But if I change this to 1000 and I save it, you'll now see my second conditional is true. I is greater than 100 right here. Okay? Now that's ifs, else ifs, and else blocks. But this can get really, really messy if you have a whole lot of conditions. Okay? So let's create, let's use our last conditional structure that we're going to talk about. And we're going to use the switch statement now for doing larger blocks of cases. Okay? So I'm going to create func, and we're going to call this our switch example. Okay? And inside of here, I'm going to do something a little bit tricky here. I'm going to start using the random package. This is going to allow us to generate a random number. Now in Go, if you're coming from other languages and you use the random number generator, usually it is given a random seed by default. Okay? It's a new seed is generated every time the application is run, and you'll get a different random number every time. Go is the opposite. If you just use the random generator to generate a number, it will be the same number every time you run the application unless you explicitly generate a new random seed. So this is pretty fancy math speak here, but this is what it ends up looking like. So I'm going to create a seed, and I'm going to use the rand function. So I'm going to say rand, and you can see here it comes from math/rand. So I hit enter. That's going to import it at the top for me. And then I am going to generate a new source. Okay? This is how we generate a new seed. Okay? And then I am going to use the time package, which will allow me to grab the current time and use that as the seed. That way, it changes every time we run the application. So I'm going to say time dot now, so right this second, and then I'm going to grab the Unix nano. Okay? The Unix nano is a way for me to get down to the nanosecond, the Unix timestamp of the current time. Okay, this seems super fancy, but it's actually really straightforward once you actually start using it in the real world situations. So here I'm going to create a variable called R. What R is going to be is our random number generator. So I have to use the rand package again, and I have to generate a new random number generator from a source. So I just defined the source above. Now I'm initializing the random number generator using that time source. Okay, that seed source as it's called. Okay, now let's actually use it. So I'm going to do a switch block here, and I'm going to say X, and I'm going to set a new value in here. So I'm going to do the same thing I did above, where I'm setting the value, and then I'm going to check the condition on it. So I'm going to set the value, and I'm going to set it equal to r.intn. So this is the way that we're going to generate a new integer. Okay, intn. And I'm going to give it a range. It'll go from 0 to whatever number I pass into intn. If I use the int, it will give me just a random number in a very large range, but I want to have control over how wide my range is, which is why I'm using intn, where I pass in. So in this case, I want my n to be 5. Then I'm going to use my semicolon, and I'm going to switch off of the value that I just created. Okay. Now, what are we going to do? Now I want to do case blocks. I am going to say, if this condition is equal to a case. In this case, my case is going to be 1. I want to know, is x equal to 1? Then I am going to do this action. And in this case, I'm going to do a format.println, and I'm going to say x is 1. Simple as that. Then I'm going to do another case. I'm going to say case 2, fmt.println, x is 2. Case 3, fmt.println, x is 3. And finally, I don't care if it's 4 or 5. I just want to know that it's 1, 2, or 3. So I'm going to do a default case. So if it's not case 1, 2, or 3, it's going to do this action finally. And this action is going to be fmt.println, x is something else. Okay, so now let's come down here. Let's run our switch example. Now I'm going to run this, and we're going to see what happens. So we're going to say that x is 1 when we ran it this time. Okay, so x came out and it was 1. What if I run this again? Oh, x is something else. That means it was either 4 or 5. If I run it again, x is 1 again. It's random. It's going to give me a new number every single time. So x is 1, x is 2, x is 3, x is 4, x is 5. One of those it's going to give me one of those numbers. And every time it's going to be different because we're using it off of the current timestamp that we run the application. Okay. So can we do something other than direct equals? What if we have a more complex switch case where we want to say if it's in a range, or if it's a Boolean value, or if there's a more complex condition? Can we do that? Absolutely. So let's create another switch block here. So I'm going to do another switch, and this time I'm going to say y equals, and I'm going to create another integer, intn, but this time I'm going to give it a much bigger value range. I'm going to give it 100 possible integer values. All right. Now, if I want to do a more complex case, if I don't want to just say switch off of y and then compare y to the case statement, I can get rid of y here entirely, and I can open a curly bracket. This means we're going to evaluate each case block individually and look at the conditional that's declared within that case block. Okay, so down here I can say my first case, y is less than 10. So I'm taking y being passed through here, and I'm doing an entire conditional here. And then I can say fmt.println, and I can say y is less than 10. Okay? And now I can do another case block where y is less than 50. Now this is important here. What we are going to do is we're going to evaluate each case one at a time. The first one that is true is going to have whatever's inside executed, and then nothing else is going to get executed after that point. In other languages, if you come from other programming languages, you have to use a break statement after. There is no break statement in Go. You just do your case block, your evaluation, you run whatever's inside of it, and then you move on. Okay? So then we're going to do our default statement here, and fmt.println, and we're going to say x is big. Okay. So now when I run this, we'll see what happens. So we see x is big. That means it's greater than 50. Okay. If I run it again, it's less than 50. That means it was greater than 10, but less than 50. So we didn't hit here, but we did hit here. Now if I can get it to show up as 10, which is a little bit harder to do. There we go. All right, y is less than 10. That means this condition hit first, and you'll notice when this condition hit first, we said fmt.println y is less than 10. We skipped y is less than 50. Even though that is also true, we didn't execute it. We only executed the first one that met, and then we broke out of the switch and moved on to the next line of code. Okay? We can do all kinds of other fun stuff, so you can see what time I'm recording this at. Let's do a quick one here where we're going to say t:= time.now, okay? and then I am going to do a raw switch. So I'm not gonna declare anything in there. I'm not gonna pass anything in. So it's what this line would look like if y was declared somewhere else in the program. So we're gonna do this here. It's a raw switch statement with nothing being passed into it. Now inside of here, I can say case t.hour. I'm gonna see what the hour is. Is it less than 12? Then what I'm gonna say is fmt.print line. We're going to say, good morning. Then I'm going to do another case, t.hour. And we're going to say less than 18. I'm going to say fmt.print line, good afternoon. And finally, we're going to default to fmt.print line, print line. Good night. Okay, let's run this and see what happens here. So you see the default, we've got 3 cases here. We're not passing anything in. We're declaring this elsewhere, and then we're just using whatever the value is of this value that was declared somewhere else in the application. We're using that inside of our switch cases. Let's run this, and now you can see it's in the afternoon for me because it's after 12 but before 1800 hours. Okay, so it's before 6 in the afternoon. Excuse me. And that's it. That's all of our conditionals that we need to know to work within Go. So hopefully this made sense. This was a lot of code flying at you at one time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible on those. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson where we're going to dig even deeper into the world of Go. Thank you so much, and I'll see you then.